For the rear brake I decided to remove the whole system as one. That way I could get it onto the bench to strip it down, clean it up and rebuild it. I'm guessing this rather odd and quite obviously homemade bracket was once used for the exhaust. I showed how to remove the caliper in part 2 of this series, so I won't bore you with it here again, but with the caliper off I could lift the whole lot out. Although the banjo on the hydraulic line was quite tight, the rest of the caliper came apart quite easily, and of course being a single pot meant there wasn't much to take apart. On these single pot calipers, wrapping it in a rag is really quite important, otherwise that piston's going to come out at a high rate of knots. Unlike the front brakes, which were in quite good condition, the rear brake was in an appalling state. Not surprisingly, the master cylinder was also in a state. It looked like the main rubber boot here had been passing water, so there was a fair bit of rust, but also the fluid was most definitely contaminated. The plastic elbow here from the reservoir was quite seized. I was quite worried I was going to snap it when I tried to get it out. With a seal kit for the caliper and a repair kit for the master cylinder, all the perishable items in this view went into the bin, and everything else got a good, thorough cleaning. I don't normally use grease when I'm rebuilding calipers or master cylinders. Instead I use the brake fluid as a lubricant on the rubber parts. But given the state of this one when I pulled it apart, I decided that I would use the grease this time. As you can see, I did put quite a thick coat of grease on all the parts, but I did clean up the excess with the rag before reassembling. Getting this rubber boot onto the bobbin was bloody tough. With all the parts serviced, they could go back on the bike along with the new hydraulic hose. I've covered off refitting the caliper in part 2 of this video series, and to refit the master cylinder was very much reverse of the process for removing it, but you will notice that although the reservoir is connected, I did not fix it back into position. That's because I need access to it for bleeding the brakes. As with the front, I've bin the original hydraulic hose and replaced it with this steel braided item from Venhill. To install it, I first fitted the banjo fitting to the end of the pipe, and then using one of the new banjo bolts, fitted it onto the caliper, and then did likewise at the other end. With the rubbers already fitted on the pipe, I used the original clamps to hold it in position. All that remained was to torque up the banjos and to tighten up the connections between the pipes and the fittings. I don't know what torque these should be set to, I just did them bloody tight. I gotta say, these new hoses with the black fittings do look good. And that positive note brings us to the end of this video, where I've done a complete overhaul of the rear brake system. I was going to cover off the bleeding of the brakes under a separate video, but unfortunately I had a few issues with my videos, and let's face it, there's thousands of YouTube videos showing how that's done. Thanks for watching.